I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I live with a lot of privilege. I live a comfortable life, and I can go throughout my day without seeing an ice rain or any of the range of atrocities that are being visited upon people these days. There may even be something happening right now, somewhere nearby, while I'm standing here talking to you. However, despite my personal good fortune, and I've spoken about this before, ever since the 2024 election, and more so for the past 9 months that we've lived through since the inauguration, I can hardly bear to face the news of the world. I've wanted to go to bed and not get up until it's all over, or at the very least, pack up, sell the condo, and move to Portugal or Costa Rica. But we don't, do we? We show up. We keep informed as we can be through people that we trust. We take action when we can to our capacity. But right now, that capacity is limited by exhaustion, created by fear, by dread, by the continual outrage that constantly threatens to burn out our brains or permanently disrupt our digestive systems. I've never been the kind of person who puts her head in the sand. I refuse to waste the precious time I have here on earth to huddle in fear and dread. And so I sometimes pull out a quote from J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, where Frodo tells the wizard Gandalf that he wishes the story's terrible events had not occurred in his lifetime. Frodo says, "I wish it need not have happened in my time." And Gandalf replies, "And so do I, and all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." So we can wish things were not happening in our time, but what can we do about it? What can we do when everything seems to be happening so fast and all at once? And what about those of us who have loss and grief in our own personal lives on top of everything else? In these difficult times, we may need to start by first making sure that we are okay, by offering ourselves a little compassion, by providing ourselves a healthy dose of self-care. This is what the Reverend Michelle Collins calls the revolutionary act of self-befriending. I just love that phrase, self-befriending. She says, "There is a tenderness we save for others that we ration from our own souls, a forgiveness we grant freely to strangers, while our own mistakes echo endlessly in memory's courtroom. We have learned to be generous with everyone but the person in the mirror. Teach us the revolutionary act of self-befriending. May we remember that we are not our worst moments. We are not the sum of our regrets. We are beloved, imperfect, glorious human beings, and worthy of the same gentle mercy we yearn to give to the world. May we learn that loving ourselves is not vanity, but necessity, the deep well from which all other love must flow." Personally, I am doing what I can to help myself get through my own struggles in a compassionate way. For example, I was comforted by reading a prayer called "For Those Who Are Losing It Right Now" by the Reverend Nadia Baltz Weber. She wrote, Dear God, please forgive me for how I acted when that Amazon truck was blocking my driveway the other day. In your endless compassion, you know my rage was really about every form of fear I am trying to keep at bay right now. How it all sort of broke through my exhausted defenses because I was coming home from the gym and I was really hungry. When I see others not being the best versions of themselves, guide me to compassion for them, that in doing so, I might also have compassion for myself. You know how fragile we are, and when, oh God, I inevitably try to control everything and everyone in my life, please have mercy upon me, for you know that what I am really doing is responding to how powerless I feel over every single thing in the news cycle every single day. She concludes. The compassion of self-care can be pretty basic. We all know what it is. Eat well, move your body, don't ingest harmful substances, connect with friends and family, laugh, and have a spiritual practice of prayer, gratitude, or mindfulness. And yet self-care can also be so very hard to do. But when we think about it in these terms, we can realize it's a genuinely essential form of compassion. Do you know the metta meditation, like what we just sang before the sermon began? It begins by emphasizing compassion for self and gradually expands to encompass all of life. The phrases I'm familiar with go something like this. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I live in peace. The goal is to cultivate feelings of warmth, compassion, and love for all, expanding outwards from the self to the entire world and all sentient beings. And I'd like to invite you to try it with me. If you would like to, you can close your eyes and take a deep breath. I'll say the words out loud, and you can close your eyes and say them to yourself. We'll do 4 stanzas of this. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I live in peace. Now our meditation expands beyond the self to include a loved one. You might picture someone in your mind that you feel very close to. May my loved one be happy. May my loved one be healthy. May my loved one be safe. May my loved one live in peace. Now we include a neutral person. A person for whom you have no strong emotion. May they be happy. May they be healthy. May they be safe. May they live in peace. And finally, may all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be safe. May all beings live in peace. It's a transformational practice that we can all engage in, a simple practice. So you may return to this time and this space. I often find solace in Buddhist teachings, and I've learned that compassion is a core Buddhist practice, and that they see it as a powerful, transformative force. I think they might say that in times like these, when peace and loving kindness can be in short supply, compassion can still be a potent way to begin healing divisions between us. Is compassion just that warm, friendly feeling you get when you watch kitten videos? That's nice. And it might be soothing when your nervous system has reached its limit. But that's not what we're really talking about here. Compassion is different from empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand and share another's feelings, essentially to feel with them, which is good and can be marvelously helpful. Compassion goes the next step. It's the desire to help and alleviate another's suffering, to move beyond feeling, to take action. It's an open-hearted stance with the intention to help. In Penelope Sipkin's book, How Compassion Made Us Human, she writes that compassion is actually part of why we survived as a species. She goes so far as to say that rather than using the phrase survival of the fittest, a more accurate phrase would be survival of the most compassionate. Compassion and social relationships are measurably good for our health, according to Dr. Helen Kingston and her associate Jenny Harnold. They took an innovative community approach to address the problem of loneliness in the town of Frome in the UK, where their medical practice is located. They utilized existing social activities in the community to create social connections, listing on the internet books, clubs, sports, choirs, walking clubs, and even places where people could simply just gather and talk. Then they trained people to become what they called community connectors. According to one source, they trained 1,000 people to serve in that role. And those people have since had about 20 conversations per year, all designed to increase the amount of compassion in their own town. That's 20,000 conversations. Well, they did a study of the number of emergency admissions in Frome over a 4-year period and compared it to the wider population of the surrounding county. They found that emergency admissions in Frome had gone down by 15%, while admissions in the county as a whole had gone up 30%. There is no pharmaceutical intervention available that can achieve that kind of result. Kingston and Hartnell say that these outcomes show that compassion and connection are objectively good for our health and can deliver healthier, happier lives. But despite this level of connection and what the metta meditation does, I'll be honest, it's really hard for me to have compassion for all human beings these days. I don't know if you heard the speeches given by the Defense Secretary and the President to 800 top U.S. military officers this past week. They were pushing what Secretary Hegseth calls a warrior ethos. Instead of telling you what I thought about that, here's a reaction from the leader of a group called Veterans for Responsible Leadership. He wrote, "This is a disgraceful message. A soldier I served with, who was later killed in Mosul, Iraq, once said the reason that he joined the military was that he believed it was the greatest force for good the world had ever known. He said the military not only taught its soldiers to be lethal, it also taught us to be compassionate and empathetic and care about not only American people, but also freedom-loving and seeking people from all over the globe. This is the true warrior ethos that so many of us veterans know and love." I've genuinely tried to understand the way some people in our government are behaving right now. I've probably spent way too much time and energy trying to figure out what makes them tick. But I'm finally getting there. I think it's something that Harvard professor Arthur Brooks introduced to me that he calls the dark triad. The dark triad is a term first conceived by Delroy Pullhouse and Kevin Williams in 2002 to describe a constellation of three socially adverse but non-pathological personality types. In other words, they wouldn't be hospitalized for this kind of behavior. Those are subclinical narcissism, Machiavellianism, and subclinical psychopathy. They said that each of these three callous and manipulative personalities are connected. It's not that these people are beyond our first principle of the inherent worthiness and dignity of every person, but it is important to know how to take care of ourselves and where our boundaries lie, just in case we encounter them in our personal or political lives. Not being a psychological professional, I don't know where the crossover is from subclinical to clinical, but I wouldn't be surprised if we were there already, based on some of what we see in the news, especially in the last couple of weeks. And it's important to be clear. The goal of narcissistic people, of Machiavellian people, of psychopathic people, of all those personality types, is to manipulate others and to get what they want. And fear is a really good way to do it. If we live in fear, they get to do what they want without any consequences. And so I began asking myself again, beyond self-care and attempting to build community, is there anything else that we can do? Is there any way to combat the harm that our hungry and terror-stricken immigrant neighbors are facing? Anything we can do to help others who are suffering, now including government workers who will not receive a paycheck anytime soon and may, in fact, lose their jobs altogether? Well, I mentioned Buddhism before, and that tradition talks about something called the fierce sword of compassion. Trust me when I'm telling you, they are not talking about kitten videos. No, this is where compassion includes strength, courage, and taking action from a place of deep care, love, and wisdom. It is compassion with the goal of alleviating suffering and directly confronting injustice. But there is a trick to it, and that is to learn how to take the action without succumbing to hate or hostility. There's the rub. That kind of compassion is fierce, but it is also tender. It is strong and assertive, while also being gentle and caring. It is a way of championing while also protecting. Symbolized by the sword, it delivers the ability to cut through delusion and clear obstacles, but it can also relieve suffering. And this kind of compassion is hard and uncomfortable because the fierceness can cause temporary pain for others. For example, when we don't shield our loved ones from the difficult life lessons that they need to learn. Meditation teacher Jack Kornfield says, compassion is not foolish. It doesn't just go along with what others say so they don't feel bad. It's about boundaries, saying an emphatic no to those who would harm others individually or systemically through racism, sexism, destroying our planet, gender, or sexual identity. Cornfield adds that it's the lion's roar in our own spiritual life arises when we rest in the truth of who we are, no longer bound by fear or pretense, but speaking and living from the center. To live with the lion's roar is to stand in your full dignity, to honor the beauty in yourself and others, and to meet the world's joys and sorrows with courage. You know, I heard someone say that they were grateful to be living in this time. It kind of blew my mind to think that way. They were saying it's because we get the chance to do our part for democracy, just like our forebears did. But however you look at it, it's up to us. As Gandalf said, we have to decide what to do with the time that is given us. We have to decide how we want to live in these times, cowering under the covers or doing our part. Let's refuse to let anyone else determine how we will live out our one precious life on this beautiful, wondrous planet. So may it be.